thanks for everybody for joining. We're just going to get started. So my name's Ollie Maitland, and I'm a co-founder here at Capitalise.com. I'm joined by Alan Woods of Woods Squared. Say hi, Alan. Hello. And by Hannah Dawson, so founder of Futrli as well.
Hello.
Hi. So today we are going to talk about advisory, or are we? So we're going to try and steer a little bit away from the word advisory, and we're going to look at some practical tips, hopefully, and with the benefit of having Alan on the call as well, around forecasting and funding. And in terms of what we mean by practical advice, I think we're just looking at two simple areas. That's how to help your clients and how to launch this service in your practice. Obviously, again, drawing on Alan's experience there. So before we start to do that, we're going to just, I think, do a couple of quick intros. I'll hand over firstly to Hannah to introduce Futrli, which I'm sure many of you are aware of in the market. And so, Hannah, I've just got your slides here, so I will watch for your slides and I'll go through.
Who knows what's on them? This is exciting, isn't it?
Surprise Friday slide session.
Great. Well, here's hoping they're good. So Futrli is, if you don't know what we are a forecasting and reporting platform. So traditional accountancy looks backwards. That's what it's been doing for forever, and we know that businesses need to look forward, because you can't run a business looking through the rear view window or rear view mirror even. So we absolutely have forecasting at the heart of what we do, but it's not just about that. It's about for an accounting firm, it's about transitioning actually, and we help you to do that too, because advisory or help. I see Mark Tickles on the call. He's brilliant on the webinar. He's wonderful for saying advisory is just help, and it is. To be able to do that, you need to help your businesses and your clients see where they're going. So that's what we do.
Okay, Seth. I've got two more slides.
Oh, great. We'll just flick through them, My trusty assistant, Ollie.
Okay.
Cool. So yeah, look, on the last one, really, I think it's really important just to say this old world and new world, you all know this. This isn't teaching your granny how to suck eggs, but we have to start. And I don't think enough of you are in pain, financial pain in your firms to actually transition in a mass stampede. But it's happening, automation is happening. And actually the fun of your job should be talking with your clients and helping their businesses to grow, but making sure that they're not at risk either. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, isn't it? On the one hand, helping your clients are about growth, but also helping your clients is to make sure that they don't get themselves into trouble. And we don't have this dreadful stat of 50% of small businesses failing within the first 3 to 5 years. It's absolutely what we at Futrli want to move the needle on, and we need you to help us do that. Cool,
thank you, Hannah. Cool. So that's just a brief intro for Futrli, and I was going to pick up on the intro from Capitalise's side. So for those who don't know what Capitalise does, you've got a bit of context into the funding side of the equation, and then we'll move on to Alan to start to ask some questions about how to bring these two concepts together. So from Capitalise's perspective, we look out into the landscape of funding and see this complex landscape where in the early 2000s there were sort of tens of lenders, and then through the financial crisis that's erupted into hundreds of lenders, now some 360 lenders in the marketplace. And so we ask the question of, how possibly can a business navigate that market? How can they find the right lender for themselves? And how can even an accountant or advisor who's helping a business on that journey look across the whole market and look at fair and equitable choices for lending options for that business? So we start looking at that problem and realize that really businesses don't help themselves. They leave just 7 days to find funding, spend 1 hour searching. And so we turn to someone who's close to the business. And in fact, we would estimate the closest professional advisor to a business, their accountant, to look at two key issues, particularly funding, and also most recently looking at disputes, which can hold a business up and get into the future. So whilst they might look into the future and have the benefit of cash flow budgeting and forecasting, the question is, can they actually achieve that future vision for their business? And funding often is a key part of that, or existing contractual disputes. Also for context, I'm just going to share a quick video, if I can get that all to work seamlessly through Zoom, which we'll see if I can.
It's good to see we're in tech.
Yeah. Wishing for the Friday God. So rather than putting through the whole video, I'll just start off and just talk you through how we can find lenders in the market. So by going through some simple options in the business, we come through to a short list down from that 360 lenders down to say 15 or 20 or so. And then we rank them, and the advisor or the business can go through and start to select those lenders they wish to send an application to. And this is taking out a huge amount of work of where a business might otherwise go straight to one bank or one lender and not see what options there are in the market. Once this is submitted to Capitalise, our internal team can review this, and then there's a single application form where a business, but most likely their advisor, can help and add supporting information, and therefore a single application pack goes off to multiple lenders. And then from then, various documents can be exchanged to complete that profile to get those much needed options for funding. Cool, so back to this, hopefully. There we go. And really just, I think, probably now thinking about how these two things work together. So we've just about done a job of merging two brands, two presentations into one. And really this is a concept where there are amazing tools that exist out there for the business and an advisor. But for us, the interesting concept is how these two can play together. And we've talked briefly about this, or Hannah did, about looking into the future for the business rather than at the rear view mirror. And Capitalise has looked at how we can find financial providers who can help reach that future vision. And we're two providers that solve two problems, but really that point of confluence, I guess, is really at the point of advice and relationship between the business and the accountant. So I'm going to introduce Alan at this point. So Alan, I think you may still be on mute, but if you're able to unmute yourself and join the conversation. We'd love to hear about, I guess, maybe even just starting with an example, case study or client where this concept of starting from the beginning, looking forward, finding solutions from the market, and getting a client into that future vision that they're so aiming for. So any examples there that you can think of that would be able to help us?
Yeah, there's one actually quite recent, I suppose, that I could share there. There's a design company that we've been working with for a good few years now, and they are, I suppose, under sort of more and more pressure to be able to pay their suppliers quickly. They're a design agency, so very similar to an accountancy agency, whereas the bigger cost of theirs is salaries and wages, so they can't really get too much terms on those. And we put together with actually using Futrli some forecasts for that business, which identified a requirement for some cash within that business, and we put that application through Capitalise. So that actually helped us to actually identify the cash that was required. I think sometimes most businesses that we speak to will think what they need just based on an arbitrary figure. It's not necessarily the right figure, or might not even be the full figure that they're looking for. So through Futrli, getting the forecasts correct actually identifies what they actually need, so they're not borrowing too much or too little. And then we can then put that application through Capitalise, manage it through the dashboard, and put that to multiple lenders via liaison with Mike in most cases at Capitalise, and just making sure that the information is provided in the best way. Yeah,
interesting. So there's a concept of trying to find the maximum, I guess, amount of cash burn that client might be looking at based on their forecast? Sorry, Hannah, I think I just interrupted you.
No, it was kind of the same question. It's just really interesting because actually for our audience, I think it's the practical takeaways are going to be really, really key. And to your point, Alan, about, you know, many of your clients don't realize actually how much money they need. Like, what is a buffer? What's your burn rate going to be? How are you helping them to understand that?
We look at that in terms of their forecast. So the first thing that we will do, we're Xero partners, so we've always been cloud-based in that sense. So this particular client is using Xero. We've updated their Xero for the budget manager so that they've got what their targets are, so that we can monitor that on a month-by-month basis. They know what their break-even point is. They know what they need to be invoicing each month. And then the extension of that with Futrli is then making sure that the cash is coming in quick enough. And if it isn't, what's the average payment terms that they're suffering, if you like, or offering to their customers? And then what then does that mean in terms of the requirement that they've got from a working cash flow perspective? So that's really, I suppose, where we try and look at it and sort of work backwards. One of the points as well we've tried to educate our client with is almost building in with their customers, almost a little bit of interest cost with their pricing when they're actually putting their proposals together for their customers and clients, so that they're not just losing money because they're offering credit to customers, you know, that they're ultimately having to fund perhaps from elsewhere.
Yeah, it's when a bank for their customers, that's the issue. And there's so many of our, you know, small business clients don't understand the relationship between, they'll say, oh, well, listen, let's do a forecast. We want to do a 10% growth this year, but they're paying their suppliers, they're collecting their cash way slower than they're paying their suppliers. And that will put them in a, you know, cash risk position. And they can't, you know, I think then visualizing that so that they can understand that it's not just as simple as, you know, you forecast, you're creating invoices, that's great. But if you're being a bank for your customers, it's not going to work, is really, really impactful in helping them with credit control decisions. Sorry, Ollie, taking over here. But it's that early part of the story that there's so many really simple ways that you can, you know, really visualize the different scenarios. And then I think once that penny drops, all of it just seems to fall into place.
Cool. Thanks, Hannah. No, I mean, this is your field, this area. So no, this is the area we need your help in. Alan, just taking that example of the agency, can you tell us a little bit more about the circumstances in which you were doing this? I mean, were you face to face with the clients? Were they an already engaged client? How did you get the information from them to build the forecast to find out how much funding they need?
Yeah, I mean, from them, we are quite involved with them at the moment. We're effectively their outsourced finance department, I suppose, within that organisation. So we do know quite a lot of how the business operates, what terms they offer, what customers are perhaps a little bit more generous terms that they're offering to, for example. So we've been able to use that knowledge and experience and understanding, and also historical information through the likes of Xero, to be able to build up quite an important picture of how that business operates. So we were able to take this to the clients during the monthly meetings that we've been having with them, identifying the fact that there were potential issues, not just from a cash flow point of view, but also potentially from making sure they're maximising the profitability of the business as well, and also then around the conversations of, are you promoting and advertising the right type of services? Are those services that you're getting a lot of revenue from, are they actually the profitable services? Are they with the customers that are slow payers? So it was really just trying to be able to understand and explain to the business owner what the implications were of the decisions they're making within their business. And it was done on a face-to-face basis, but with the knowledge that we already had from being able to identify the transactional history, I suppose, within the Xero system that we were operating on their behalf.
Yeah. And does that sort of process methodology become useful for other similar clients in digital agencies and consultancies? I mean, is this something that you can kind of build up as a bit of IP within the business to reuse?
Yeah, definitely. And I think in a lot of ways that design agencies, that they ultimately are providing a service that is I suppose, limited or restricted by the number of hours that they have available within their team. So it's a really easy conversation, I suppose, for us to have with them, because we have exactly the same challenges as a professional services organisation ourselves. We're trying to maximise the return we get from the resources that we have within our team. So I find that it's always really, it's an easier conversation because I'm coming at it from a similar direction to have those conversations with, whether it be solicitors or architects, anyone else that's in that kind of providing a service. Accountants, I think, should feel much more comfortable with those conversations.
No, I used to run an agency myself for 10 years, so I know about utilisation. It's the utilisation and profit are pretty closely linked. Sure. Okay, great stuff. So essentially that was a service that you had with an existing client, and so in a way you had some of this data at your fingertips, some of the knowledge at your fingertips. And did you charge them for that service, or is that part of a sort of retained service that you have going on?
Yeah, so that's part of a retained service that we have with them. So it's effectively a sort of an outsourced sort of financial controller FD type role that we undertake for that particular client. The way that we've done it previously, because we've been involved in and around the funding sort of landscape for the clients since around about 2008, 2009. So when the sort of the initial recession sort of hit, we didn't have the tools like these available at that stage. So it was much more of a manual process, and it wasn't, there was no real-time information. So it was a much different landscape from a provider's point of view, from our perspective. But what we used to do at that point was that we'd help produce the business plans, the forecasts, liaise with all the different finance organisations, and as you say, it wasn't maybe as many back then. So, but it was the banks and the local business support organisations, and we've really evolved that process now into a kind of no-win, no-fee service for business funding support for businesses. So, and that level of fee depends on the actual package of services that they need from us. So if they're already getting the kind of FD, FC type role, it's kind of bundled into their service. But if a business comes to us and just wants some help with identifying what their cash requirement is, and perhaps putting together the applications or speaking to the different people, then we can put together a package, and it's linked to the funding that they're looking to secure. So very much like tax planning, we're taking the risk away from the business owner, and really just trying to be part of that process. And we only get paid if we're effective in helping them put together a really effective report, and also secure the funding for them at the end of the day as well.
Interesting. So your success really is linked to the success of finding funding, and the client, I guess, is usually coming into you at a stage where they need growth. So they're kind of looking to you to get them up on that ladder, and put the plan together, do the forecasting and do the funding, all of this one package together. Yeah, definitely. And I think what we found initially when we were doing this is that we did it on a fixed fee basis initially, so that we were, there was a cost to the package when we first started offering it. But actually what we found was that most businesses that are looking for funding, the one thing they don't have is cash to pay their advisor to help them put together a proposal or a plan to secure the funding. So that's why we come up with this sort of solution to say, actually, we'll take a kind of a success fee, if you like, that's based on the level of funding that the business wants to secure, and also based on the level of support they need from us, so that it's that it takes away that sort of barrier for them to actually engage us to help them to source the funding for their business. Yeah, I guess also at that point you've got a client that is, when funded, really in need of the ongoing financial management and stewardship from yourself. So looking at monthly or quarterly reports are going to be very valuable once you've got some leverage into the business to try and accelerate into the future. So not only, I guess, do you get the benefit of that transaction, but also the ongoing fees, I'd imagine, from a client who understands or values the relationship because you understand their business, and also needs it at the same time. And I think for us, that's very much the win relationship between the accountant and the business at this stage, is that they've got a future vision they're aiming for, you can help them get started on that journey, but also critically, you can make sure that they're on the straight and narrow through it as well. So I think, that kind of maybe ties back to the second part of this arrow. We've got, obviously, it is a virtuous circle, I think, between forecasting and funding, because naturally, Hannah, Futrli is very applicable in that dashboarding and ongoing financial management side of things. So obviously, we've kind of talked a bit about the forecasting side. Is there something you could say about how Futrli is used as a product beyond that funding?
Absolutely. Look, what you don't want to do is, well, we do for Capitalise's sake, I guess, but what you don't want to do is for the businesses to get to the point that they need cash because they're going to go out of business. What you want it for is for growth opportunity. Anything that's high risk, of course, that facility has to be there. We have to be able to close the loop. But, the issue with using traditional management accounting packs, or board reports as a business, you can't run, that's not an operational tool, right? You can't be making decisions on that every day, which is why the real-time, the dashboarding side of things is absolutely key, but they should be used for operational drivers that your clients can actually affect change with every day. So I always use the hospitality example because that was my background. I could not run my business without understanding what my food GP was, my drink GP was, what my wage percentage was, my productivity analysis against all of those things. Those were the things that I could control every shift. So twice a day, I could control those things. And they had a huge impact on, of course, whether I could pay my VAT at the end of the quarter. So I think it's the education piece that you as advisors have to help with, and you do have to help with, because your SME clients have gone into their business with a passion for something. Probably not figures, or they'd be accountants. But they want to bake, sell the cake, fix the bike, launch the software company. We're still a small business, really, in the eyes of everybody else. It's that dream and whatever burning passion that they've got. And so to be able to give them, very clear guidance over understanding credit control properly, understanding how to price their services, understanding how to collect cash, understanding what percentage KPIs are right for them. And some of this is going to be really new to you. And I get that, actually. I think that was one of my biggest learnings when launching Futrli 4.5 years ago. I was like, oh God, accountants are going to love being able to do all of these things with their clients. It's like, no, they're not actually doing it at all with their clients today because there's been a huge compliance focus. But I think transitioning from, just to be really clear, like the majority of your clients won't have a clue what, a quick ratio is, for instance, or all of the financial ratios that you use, everything that you can see in the Xero business performance dashboard, the majority of that will go completely over the head of the majority of your clients, as will their balance sheet. So really stripping back the key performance indicators, the metrics, the numbers, the levers, those lead indicators that they are knowingly or unknowingly influencing every day is where that first education piece can go. And I think if you can give them one light bulb moment, so if it is a hospitality business, to go, listen, if you change your prices and just increase them by X, we can get gross profit based upon, what you're paying with your suppliers today, which we know and we're tracking. If you can increase your food gross profit margin from 35% to 40% or similar, this is going to be the impact on your business, and then they can visualize it in a graph, they can see it in a chart. It's not just numbers, because again, please bear in mind that the majority of your clients, and this is not an overstatement because we've done the research, do not love Excel. They do not love numbers, hence having charts. Okay. So actually making your dashboards stimulating, different, only have numbers where you need them. You might even need one KPI that's just highlighted, but it's just giving that, telling a story is what you need to do, and I've said this for years. Hopefully it's finally filtering through, but it's about telling a story of a business today, because the business in a month's time is going to have changed again. And I think that's your opportunity for these touch point moments, is that at time and place, if there's a funding need, because you've looked ahead of time, you're fully prepared, and it's not a quick, oh my God, we haven't got enough money to pay the payroll this month. It's looking like, based upon what we're doing today, there's going to be a hole in 3 months' time that we need to look at. So do we have a credit control policy that we pull in? Do we start, we're collecting cash from our customers in 45 days on average. Do we reduce that? If we reduce that by 5 days, what's the impact on the cash? It's these practical meetings that you can have, and really quickly, in a, knock up a quick scenario, you can do a copy of one that you've got already. You can just, globally change all of the supplier payment days, or, and your payment days, actually supplier and customer payment days, to really see that immediately in real time and what it would look like. Suddenly you've got these tools that you're armed with, so that you can become this superhero of as an advisor, and your clients will love you for it because they feel safe. And that's your job, is to make them feel safe, I think
it's a really interesting point there, in terms of, once you've kind of been through the process and built up the dashboard, ultimately, as an advisor, you become the custodian of that dashboard. And so it's quite a sticky proposition, because, over time, whoever the client manager is, or the person who's dealing with the client day to day, they've built up that rapport with the clients and knowledge about their business. And that's kind of encapsulated in the dashboard, but also knowledge of how to change that dashboard and move it forward as the business evolves.
And tracking, the whole point about our dashboards as well is the fact that it's not just backwards focus. It's not BI. It's not just today in the past. They are, as quickly as a template, flip them into looking at the future. It's so easy to do. One of my favorites, he's an absolute darling client in Australia. His portfolio of clients, he rags them, he red, amber, greens them, and he writes this synopsis every month. So before every meeting, he's assessed them, and his clients are so obsessed with the rating that he's going to give them, that their profitability and performance across the board have increased, because he's explained the story to them. And when he looks at exception reporting first, and it's like, okay, so we said that you were going to do this month, you've actually done that. And I'm going to give you a red because actually you failed on these bits, but it could have been an amber if you just done this bit. And, the majority of them are like, we got a green. It's hilarious when he tells the stories about it, because it's bonkers. But
it came from custodian to taskmaster.
Yeah, but it's just such a simple prospect, isn't it? If you've gone to the trouble of creating the forecast, that's your sat nav. There's your sat nav right there. And you know what? Just like sat nav, there's a faster route. Okay, we need to update and change course. That's how it should be used.
Cool. Thanks. Han, I'm just going to go back to Alan, and I think probably our last slide of before we take some questions is really thinking about, okay, we've talked a bit about how this might work in practice. We've gone through the act of forecasting and the funding, and now the ongoing financial management. But as Wood Squared, how have you taken this to market? We've talked a bit about this no win, no fee package, but can you tell us a little bit more about how you've taken this to market? How do you price it? And also, I think, a nuanced one, but how do you raise this as a topic with clients?
Okay. I think what's really helped for us as a business is the tools like Futrli and Capitalise. That from a taking it to market just means that we can leverage it so much more, because without the tools, without those platforms, it was much more of a manual process. And Anna's mentioned their spreadsheets, and spreadsheets galore from an accountant's point of view, trying to create these fantastic documents, fantastic spreadsheets. So I think what we've been able to do really from a pricing point of view, and then from taking it to market, is that it's not just about having someone who's an expert in Excel formulas, and different sort of tools within Excel. If you're comfortable and have the training through Futrli, and then have been shown the platform on Capitalise, really it's something that we use to be able to identify, by using Futrli to identify if there's a particular issue approaching for a business. We use the key alerts aspect of Futrli, for example. So that would highlight to us if a business is over or under from their sales targets, over or under for what their bank balance should be, over or under for what their spend is that month. And that gives us an opportunity then to have a conversation with the client based on something other than your VAT returns due on Friday. We need your information, we're missing a bank statement. just a slightly different conversation and a different way to position the service and the support that we can offer. From a pricing point of view, as I said earlier, we link that to the level of support that we need. So if it's a one-off project around funding for maybe a new business or a client that not had this service before, we would be looking to link that to the funding that they would be looking to get. If they don't have a business plan, they don't have forecasts, and they need help with everything, we have a set percentage for that. So we charge 7.5% plus VAT of the funding that they're looking to secure and we do, the business plan, the forecasts, fill in the application forms, hold the hand through the whole process. Some businesses might have a business plan. Actually, the business is probably better at writing the business plan than we are. So that's more often the case. But they need some help with the financial information, whether that be the management accounts, the forecasts, who to actually approach, how to do the application. So on that basis, we would look at 5% plus VAT as a guide. And then some businesses, if they've got an internal system or that we're already providing that service for them, we would charge 2% plus VAT, a bit like a brokerage fee in a sense, to be able to help them secure that funding. So that's sort of how we price the service. Marketing it, we do a lot of networking. So in networking events, it's much easier to have a conversation or talk about things like helping businesses to actually measure and improve and monitor their performance, ultimately maybe help them with funding, rather than, we can do your tax return or we can do your payroll or we can do your VAT. Just differentiates us from the marketplace. And bringing it up with clients, because probably I would say 80% of our clients are on zero. The ones that aren't on zero are on a sort of software that is specific to their industry. So it's, they're still on some form of system. We can monitor that very closely. So actually, we're going to them with the opportunity, if you like, to be able to help them to measure the numbers, identify what numbers are important to them, talk to them about what their break-even point is, and really just trying to look at what their profitability levels are. So really, that's how we bring things up. It's more of a conversation, and we'll include that in any of the regular meetings that we have with the clients.
I think one thing that's interesting as a take-up listening to you talk there, Alan, is that I guess you've got familiar with these two tools and you've assembled a service line that makes sense under your brand, and there's no win, no fee message, and obviously that could vary based on whatever is right for a particular practice. So in terms of when you got started, and obviously I guess maybe if you could take us through the first stages of doing this. I think you mentioned you've been doing this for some time, so it may be asking you to go back some history at this point. But how did you first start offering this service? If you could offer any tips to someone who's thinking about doing this.
Yeah, I think we first started it because we started our business 2007. So in terms of hindsight from us, that was great timing just before the recession and everything else. So we kind of a lot of our clients that we were dealing with were relatively new at that point themselves in terms of where they were in their business. Quite a lot of them were affected kind of negatively, if you like, in terms of the implications for their cash flow and their business because of the changes that happened around about that time. So really the service came about because of it was something that our clients needed. That really was where it originated from. It was a service they needed. It was something we were comfortable at doing. We understood. We had really good relationships with local banks at that point and sort of funding organisations. We knew who to speak to. We knew how to present information. We knew how to help businesses get the funding they needed. And as I say, that kind of evolved over sort of 12 months period, really, from a fixed fee approach for that service to being linked to a positive outcome, because while we were charging a fixed fee for clients, we never got to a point where we didn't get them the funding they wanted or needed. So we were really confident in the service and the process that we had in place. The downside to that initially was that it was very time intensive. It was probably more reliant on me in the early stages, because it was me with the relationships with the banks and it was me with the relationships with the funders. So really the huge opportunity from our business, and I think for other accountancy businesses now, is that the tools that are there for Futrli and with Capitalise allows that service to be delivered in a much more systemised and process-led basis, which then ultimately means that you can provide it to more clients, and actually it becomes a really valuable service for clients and a really profitable service for the accountancy firm as well.
Cool. Thank you, Alan. Cool. So I think we're also ready for some questions as we just start to go on to the sort of final closing remarks. And I think just to replay that, there are obviously lots of different ways to get comfortable with these two platforms, I'm sure. There are, I think, training and services both with Futrli and on Capitalise, which if you have a firm where you've got other client managers who you want to bring up to speed with how this all works, there's online learning there. So I think, certainly getting confidence to know that the tools behind you are going to do the job, the tools, and in our case, tools and service with the consultant sitting there too, are critical parts. So I think we've just had a couple of questions come in. So one was, do we have any ability to fund charitable based businesses? I think that's probably a question for our funding consultants. I think probably the answer is yes. There's 360 lenders out there, but I'll have to defer that question, but I think we probably should be able to see where we can go with that. Interestingly, it's not something that we've majored on. I think it's actually quite an interesting question because it's a big market, and right now we probably see more limited companies, sole traders and limited liability partnerships. There's no reason why we couldn't start looking at CICs and other charitable based organisational structures. So good question there. So just before we close out, I think I also want to make aware there is an offer available as well. And so this is an offer brought to you by both Futrli and Capitalise. So if you introduce two clients who are funded between, I think it's 1st November and end of January, we are offering a 6-month license of Futrli, and there's more details of that on our website, and I'm sure we'll follow up with emails to everyone who's signed up to this webinar and share more information there. We really think it's such a great coupling. I think, as Alan's demonstrated today, it's not just about getting comfortable with those two solutions, but it's also about thinking about how to take that to market and take something that is comprehensive and coherent with your brand as a consultant or as an advisor or an accountancy practice, and take this to market. So, Hannah, I'm going to offer any closing thoughts or comments. Then please do raise now. Any questions, we can take those before we kind of wrap up. We are cool. Well, I think I just want to say thank you very much to Hannah and also specifically to Alan as well for joining. So thank you for joining us, and we hope you have a great weekend and enjoy the lovely hot summer, or not, that we're on now.
Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.